Ryan Preece might still be a possibility to drive the 41 for Stewart-Haas Racing in 2023, and NASCAR is talking about going international racing as early as 2024. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. If you got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel, let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We've only got one paint scheme to take a look at today, and it's Joey Logano's 2023 AAA insurance scheme for 2023. Honestly, I love it. They're changing up different colors. I think this looks really good. Looks really epic. Looks really awesome. And I'm looking forward to see it on the racetrack in 2023. It looks really awesome and looks very good, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about most popular driver voting. As most popular driver voting has been officially open and will be open until, I believe, November the 30th, which will be the last day before we have the Nashville banquet for the championship weekend. I expect that Chase Elliott's going to win the Cup Series 1, especially since Hooters is sponsoring. I think he's going to easily win the most popular driver voting. But if you're wanting to vote and vote for different drivers, it might be closer than it's been in previous years. But I still think that Chase Elliott is easily going to go out there and win the voting. I think it's very easy. I think Chase Elliott's going to go ahead and win the voting. I think he goes ahead and gets it done. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about NASCAR. As it was announced yesterday that NASCAR is going to have a float in the Rose Parade on January the 2nd. This float is going to be to commemorate the 75th year of NASCAR's next year. Is going to be the 75th year in NASCAR history, and also to promote the Busch Clash at the LA Coliseum for 2023. This is really cool to see that NASCAR is doing this. I love that NASCAR is trying out new things, and I think this float also looks really awesome. By the way, design looks absolutely incredible, and I think you're going to have a lot of people that are going to be tuning into the Rose Parade because of this float. So it's really cool they're doing this. I really love it and excited to see, and I will definitely try to check out to see that float. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kevin Harvick. Now, one thing I did not mention earlier this week is that Kevin Harvick finished in the top 10 in the Cup Series race at Phoenix. He got his 19th consecutive top 10 at Phoenix. That is now the most top 10s at a single track consecutively in history. He surpassed Dale Earnhardt and Richard Petty, who both had 18 at a single track. Kevin Harvick now has 19 at Phoenix. This is very impressive stat. The fact that Kevin Harvick has more than two of the greatest NASCAR drivers of all time when it comes down to consecutive top 10s shows that Kevin Harvick is one of the greatest drivers ever, especially at a single track. I think it's absolutely phenomenal, absolutely incredible, and amazing to see that basically Kevin Harvick has been able to do that. I think that's so awesome, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Chicago Street Course. Now, we do have a few stories around Chicago Street Course that I want to kind of conglomerate into one section. Let's first begin with a report on Monday from Adam Sturck. He reports that NASCAR is pursuing a founding partner model instead of a title sponsor for the Chicago Street Course. The plan is NASCAR wants 4 founding partners at roughly $2 million annually when it comes to ad time for NBC. I think it's really cool, very similar to how NASCAR kind of does their branding for the main model. They don't do just one main sponsor. They basically have a conglomerate of 4 different sponsors that they have founding partners, which I think is Geico, Coca-Cola, Xfinity, and I can't remember the other one that is the sponsor, and Busch. Those are the 4 main sponsors of NASCAR. I would expect that there's going to be a few different sponsors on that. Also, tickets have actually gone on sale for that, and basically premium seats are going to be $465, and general admission is going to be $269. So it's going to cost a lot more than a normal NASCAR race, but I think NASCAR is trying to somewhat, in a sense, copy Formula 1 with the street course race. It's better than some of the Formula 1 prices, I will say. If you look at some of the F1 prices especially, they cost thousands of dollars. $269 for an event isn't terrible. It's a street race. You're going to have a lot of people that are going to show up, and they're expecting around 100,000 people to show up to the event. Honestly, I know a lot of people are disappointed by those numbers, but really they're not the end of the world, and in my opinion, they're not the end of the world when it comes to those prices. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about North Wilkesboro. As it was reported by Bob Pockers on, I believe, Wednesday, he reported that the safer barriers for North Wilkesboro and the lighting have been approved, and basically the cost for the safety barriers was $1,095,417, and the lighting around the track is $1,950,000. Honestly, that's not too bad considering the track size. Expected the cost to be a lot higher than they were. The fact that they're not insane is kind of good to see for sure, and honestly, those numbers are not that bad when it comes to the pricing for that. We knew it was going to be somewhat money, but if they had a lot bigger track, it would have cost a lot more money. So that's the money when it comes to that, and that's how much things are costing. Honestly, not a shock and not surprised that it's really costing as much as it is, though, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Noah Gragson. As it was announced, I believe, Wednesday evening, according to Racing America, that Noah Gragson is going to be entering the 2022 Snowball Derby, and I believe he'll be driving for Terry Jones' organization. Noah Gragson has entered a Snowball Derby many times. In fact, I believe he won the Snowball Derby either in 2017 or 2018, and now will once again be entering to try to win another Snowball Derby. This is really, really exciting for sure. Noah Gragson, of course, coming off of an insane year in 2022, where he ended up winning 7 or 8 NASCAR Xfinity Series races and had a chance to win the championship. I think he's got a good shot to get the Snowball Derby win, and I think he'll be absolutely 100% a contender. I think he'll have a very, very good chance to get it done. Watch for him, so I think he's going to absolutely be a threat to go out there and win this event. I think Gragson's got a really good chance and a really good opportunity to win the Snowball Derby. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the truck TV ratings for 2023. According to Joseph Raley, who does some work for TobyChristie.com, he reports that the Truck Series averaged 627,000 viewers in 2022. That is up 5% from 2021, where they had 599,000 viewers. That's really good to see. The Truck Series did have a little bit of an increase, and the Truck Series has grown. But I do think the Truck Series would grow a lot more if the broadcast would be taken a lot more seriously. One of the big issues I've had with the Fox broadcasting is basically that they have not taken the broadcast as seriously as I think they should. So going into 2023, they need to 100% overhaul the broadcast, because I think the broadcast booth has not done a good job broadcasting the races. So I really hope they can do a big overhaul during this offseason to fix these problems, but it's good to see at least the Truck Series did have an increase in TV ratings. I think at least that's a positive step and a good step in the right direction, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ty Majeski. As Ty Majeski a couple days ago was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, and he talked about racing clean with title contenders at Phoenix. Talking about he wanted to race really, really clean on the racetrack, and it was a really good interview to hear. And honestly, it showed he wants to kind of change the culture when it comes to how people end up getting raced. I love this from Ty Majeski. Ty Majeski came up the hard way, and I think he wants these guys to race a lot more clean and respectful. One of the big issues the last years, especially when it comes to racing in the Truck Series and other respective series, is the fact I feel like the aggression has gotten way up. And I think a lot of drivers have gotten frustrated, especially in his series. They've gotten really, really frustrated. The battle between Ben Rhodes, Chandler Smith, Zane Smith, and Majeski for the championship, I thought was very, very respectful. And Ty Majeski was racing really, really hard and spun himself out. You're going for a championship, and you're going to race really, really hard. But I hope that we can continue to change the culture of racing, and we kind of get back to the old ways of how we used to race back in the day. So I think it's good that Majeski talked about that. I think the racing has gotten insane, especially over the last couple of years, and hopefully we can head toward a better direction when it comes to that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Chase Elliott and Austin Cindric. As this weekend, both Chase Elliott and Austin Cindric are going to be competing in the Nitro Rallycross events at Wild Horse Pass, which I believe is into the Phoenix area. They will be meeting in Nitro Rallycross. Both drivers, I believe, have raced in Nitro Rallycross in the past. Chase Elliott nearly won his seat to nearly get into the main finals, but unfortunately not make the finals due to, I believe, getting disqualified from his event against, I believe it was Tanner Faust he was racing against, and he got disqualified from his event for racing way too aggressive. Both drivers have some experience in this, so I think that they will be big threats to go out there and win their events, hopefully. I think it's exciting to see the NASCAR drivers go out and run different events during the offseason, keep themselves busy, and hopefully they will have a chance to go out there and win. I think it'd be big for that. They will be on Peacock. He's already seen them kind of practicing. We've already seen video of them practicing, so I think it's really exciting to see for sure. They're going out there and racing in those events, and I'm looking forward to see how they're going to perform in that. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Takuma Sato. As Takuma Sato, according to reports and multiple reports, including Autosport, that Takuma Sato is likely going to scale back to just an oval-only IndyCar schedule in 2023, but will do some IMSA racing in 2023. Now, obviously, I don't know what team he'll be with because Rickor Racing, I don't know if they've got an IMSA program, so it sounds like maybe Rickor is going to get an IMSA program in some sort of capacity. That could be a possible option why they're bringing him over there. But it's interesting. But Takuma Sato, generally, where he really forms is on the ovals. He's won 2 Indianapolis 500s, and he's been a really competitive driver on the ovals throughout his IndyCar career. So it makes a lot of sense why he kind of wants to scale back. And he's been doing IndyCar for many years. I think he's been in IndyCar since around 2010 or 2011. So I can't really blame him for wanting to scale back. He's a much older driver now, and I think he wants to try out new things as well and go do different forms of racing. So I think that's really exciting. He's looking to do some different forms of racing for 2023. Hopefully, whatever he does, it'll be really good for him, and hopefully he'll be very competitive in whatever series he decides to run, and hopefully he'll be competitive in IndyCar as well. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ty Dillon. As Ty Dillon basically spoke to Bob Pockers on Sunday, but Bob reported this yesterday, that Ty Dillon says he's looking forward to 2023 with Spire and thanks Petty GMS for an amazing opportunity. Obviously, Ty Dillon will not be returning to Petty GMS Motorsports in 2023, as he'll be basically moving over to Spire Motorsports to drive the 77. And Noah Gragson, who we talked about already, will be taking over that 42 car for Petty GMS. Ty Dillon, I think, has had a very up and down year in 2022. Didn't have a fantastic year, and especially when you compare it to Eric Jones, who got a win and was way more competitive. It's not a surprise that Ty Dillon was unfortunately let go. For a driver like Noah Gragson, who I think is going to perform a lot better, no disrespect to Ty, but I think that Noah is going to perform a lot better in that 42 car. But especially with Jimmy Johnson coming on, I think the team is going to also look a lot better. But I don't think Ty Dillon's a bad driver. Do I think he's an amazing driver? No, I don't think Ty Dillon's an amazing driver. But I think Spire having 2 full-time drivers going next year, I think just makes a lot more sense. And I do think it's going to work out for the long-term future. In my opinion, I think it's really going to work out for the team in a sense. So honestly, very happy to see that he's going to Spire next year. I hope he can do well. Hope he can show some good stuff for the team. And hope he can perform great because it would be good for the team. And hopefully Ty Dillon will do a really, really good job in 2023. Looking forward to see what happens next year. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, NASCAR posted this, I believe, on Tuesday or Wednesday morning. They basically posted a radio message that Kyle Busch had at Phoenix, thanking Joe Gibbs Racing and thanking everybody from M&N for all the hard work they've given him for the last 15 years. I thought this radio message was a really, really good one. It was a very emotional one. You can tell Kyle Busch is very emotional on the radio for many, many reasons. Kyle Busch had a lot of stats with Joe Gibbs Racing. He, of course, went on to win nearly 60 races with the team, one of the winningest drivers for a single organization in the history of NASCAR, and also got 2 championships and brought the 18 car back to the forefront in the field. Obviously, Kyle Busch will not be returning to the team next year, as he'll be going over to work with Richard Childress Racing in 2023 to drive the number 8 car. Going into 2023, I do expect that Kyle Busch will perform a lot better, because I think that Kyle Busch will not have that burden on his back where he basically has to worry about performance. He's got a really good crew chief. He's working with them, and especially with how well Ty Reddick did perform in that 8 car, I really do believe that Kyle Busch is really setting himself up for a really, really bright future heading into 2023. So I'm really excited to see what happens, but I cannot wait to see what Kyle Busch is going to do. But I thought this message was really, really sweet and really, really great to see. So I'm happy that at least Kyle Busch is trying to end it on a good note. I know there was a lot of things that happened, a lot of stuff I'm not going to get into, but it's really, really unfortunate how kind of things ended as well. But in all my opinion, I'm very happy to see that Kyle Busch sent that really nice and sweet message to the team. I thought that was a really awesome and great message, in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about burnouts on Broadway. As Bob Pockers talked about this, and there's been rumors about the burnouts on Broadway for the last few weeks, but according to Bob, it sounds like there will not be burnouts on Broadway in 2022. While not confirmed by NASCAR themselves, there have been rumblings and rumors in the industry that this sounds like this may not end up happening in 2022. This is really, really unfortunate in my opinion, because one of my, basically the only big thing that really kept a lot of people very interested in the awards show is basically the burnouts on Broadway, where basically every one of the playoff drivers who made the playoffs do end up basically go ahead and end up doing a burnout. And they got a lot of attention and a lot of people showed up to it. I think it is very disappointing that they're likely not going to be bringing that back in 2022 because I think it's been a really good event. But I do think maybe there still is a shortage going on. Perhaps it could be playing a factor in the cost. So that's something that probably could be an interesting reason why that is not happening. Though I am very disappointed. I will say this. I'm very disappointed, though, they're not going to be bringing that back. I think it's been one of the best things for the event overall. But, again, I'm not entirely shocked surprised. If it's because of the lack of cars, because there still could be a shortage in the industry, that is a very possible thing. But it's disappointing in a sense that they're likely not bringing that back. So I think the Burnouts Broadway it's been my favorite thing, and it really made the event bigger. Hope they bring that back in 2023, but it sounds like in 2022, the Burnouts on Broadway are going to unfortunately end up going away. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. As Kyle Larson has basically revealed that he'll be running an event, I believe Cameron said the big Rio Grande late model race on January 7th through 15th. With him announcing that he's going to be doing that, he will not be racing in the 2023 Chili Bowl Nationals, which will be the first time since, I believe, 2008 that Kyle Larson has not entered the Chili Bowl Nationals. Now, if you've been paying attention to this channel for a long time and you've been paying attention, this is nothing new. We reported about this, I think, in the middle of July, that Kyle Larson said he would likely not be entering the 2023 Chili Bowl Nationals if they cannot figure out issues when it does come to cost. One of the biggest issues with the Chili Bowl is at the cost of the event. Right now, the prize pool for the winner of the race is $10,000, which should be way more. There's a lot of events, especially, and Larson's been a really big proponent on this, that drivers should be getting paid way more for these events, especially with the rising cost of how the economy is at the moment right now. They want bigger prize pools for the teams to be able to have. There's, like I said, there's like the Prairie Classic, I think, got $20,000, and it really just costs these teams a lot of money to do these really, really big events. And these teams are spending a lot of money on these cars, especially the big teams like Keith Kunz Motorsports organizations. They're not wanting to spend, they're spending a lot more money and they're not getting enough payment back. Look, I understand where Emma Hahn's coming from on this as well, but at the same token and same time, you've got to basically play it to everybody's advantage. And I think it's just really disappointing and really unfortunate that really the cost situation is a really big factor why he's not entering it. It's disappointing because I think you're going to have a lot of other drivers not entering it as well. And that is a very disappointing thing. And again, I'm very disappointed that basically drivers are going to be entering because of the cost. The costs, I think, are way too high, in my opinion, for this event. And I think you got to bring those costs in a little bit if you're going to have people enter. But it's not a shock and not a surprise to me that you don't have drivers entering. I think it's disappointing, but not a surprise that Larson's not entering the 2023 Chili Bowl Nationals. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cody Ware. Now, Kelly Crandall, who works for Racer Magazine, she actually put out a really good article about Cody Ware's wreck and him walking through the crash. Cody Ware, a lot of people have blamed the next-gen car for the impact, but one of the biggest things I've seen from a lot of people, and including him saying, is that this next-gen car could take major and way bigger impacts. If you saw the wreck at Texas, it doesn't matter what type of car you're in, whether it's a Gen 4, Gen 5, or Gen 6, or Gen 7 car, which is the next-gen car. Seems like it doesn't matter. If you have a big hit like that, you're likely going to get an injury or you're going to get very, very hurt. This car is meant to take big impact, and Cody Ware basically ended up having, I think, a fractured leg, if I'm not mistaken, some sort of fractured bone in basically, which is really, really unfortunate that ended up happening. And actually to the point where he actually had to sit out a race after roll because of the whole shifting stuff, but it made a lot of sense why he did end up sitting out. Again, I think the next-gen car's got a lot of work to do when it comes to the rear of the car, and I know that NASCAR's got some big plans, which they are working on right now, and they're planning to implement for 2023, and NASCAR is paying for that, which I think is a positive. But, hey, at least we have a little bit more of a positive next-gen story, though. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But interesting that he walked to the wreck crash and did not go ahead and directly blame the next-gen car. I think that's very important. The next-gen car can't always get blamed for all the impacts, because even some of the older cars did have problems with these impacts, and it's not a surprise that he's kind of defending that, but at the same token, at the same time, the next gen does have some work that needs to be done, and I know NASCAR is working on some stuff to try to fix those problems. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Cup TV ratings for 2023 and also from this past weekend at Phoenix. So, according to Adam Stern, NBC earned a 1.86 rating and 3.213 million viewers for Sunday's NASCAR Championship. That is compared to a 1.95 rating and a 3.214 million viewers in 2021. So we're down 1,000 people in viewership, and we were down about 6% in the ratings category. Now, I will say this, that number probably would have been a lot less without the Chastain Hail Melon. But I think a lot of us were expecting the number to be a little bit higher due to the fact we all thought we were going to get a lot more people from the Hail Melon. But sometimes 6-second clips that are get 100 million views does not always transfer over to making a lot more viewership in the sport. That's probably one thing that needs to be importantly noted. But the other thing I do want to kind of note in this as well is that I think it shows that a lot of people don't care about the championship anymore. We saw playoffs generally down just a little bit in a lot of different areas. We did have some races that did increase in the playoffs, but generally I think a lot of people don't care about the playoffs, and I think the season also is way too long as well, whereas you're going to get into the other part of this. So according to Austin Kanensky, who is a really good upcoming rider, I think you all should be definitely paying attention to, as that guy is about to take off in this industry. He reported that basically 114.231 million viewers watched in 2022 and averaged 3.006 million per race. That is the first time since 2018, which coincidentally Joe Logano won the championship. That's the first time since 2018 we've had more than 3 million viewers on average per race. I think that's at least a major positive if we can talk about it, which I think a lot of that comes from the early portion of the year. We have more people watching the beginning year in the summer than the end of the season. Now, why did the ratings go down as much as they did at the end of the year? Well, theoretically, a big reason why the ratings went down as much as they did at the end of the year is because of the fact that the season, I think, is too long. I think you got to shorten the season up. You can still keep 36 races, but if you can end the season like in October, I think that would really, really help a lot of these teams out. I know there's been rumors about a 40-race schedule. I think the schedule needs to be shortened to around, I think 36 races you can keep, but you got to shorten the schedule just a little bit. And I think that's why ratings have generally been going down near the end of these years. It's because the season goes into November, especially during the NFL season. But the NFL also, they didn't have the greatest ratings either from a past week or two. They didn't have the massive drop. They had a massive drop as well. And I think a lot of it's due to some of how the games have been played and such. I think a lot of people are also just focusing on other stuff at the moment, especially since we're getting to the end of November. And the championship race did not feel like a championship race either. I think you got to change the championship race and move it around as well. But also, I think at least there's a positive that more people did watch. So I hope that they can find a way to make the championship race more exciting. First of all, go to a different track. Please go to a different track because it did flatline, which isn't bad, but isn't great at the same token. So they can find a way to go to a new track in 2024 for that, because we're going to be back at Phoenix for 2023, and we'll see what happens in the future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Nashville Fairgrounds. Now, we haven't talked a lot about the Nashville Fairgrounds recently, but it seems like we're getting a little bit closer to potential plans being announced for the future of the Nashville Fairgrounds. So I believe on Tuesday, Bob Pockrass reported that plans for the fairgrounds were basically being discussed for the near future. So basically the plans are, in regards to some of the plans, I'm not going to get into everything, but the plans are to eventually have 30,000 plus seats, maybe even more than what we initially thought. They're planning, originally going to have 30,000 seats. Sounds like we may even have more seats added to the Nashville Fairgrounds. And according to the reports, it sounds like there will be races every other year. So when they do get approved, which likely won't be until 2025, but those plans will probably go through. Now, of course, the Metro Council and the Fair Board have to approve it, so both have to approve. The Fair Board will likely approve of that, but the Metro Council is going to be the big thing that has to go through. But it sounds like we're getting closer and closer to basically things getting approved, which I think is a major positive step generally in the right direction. And if we can get the National Fairgrounds back on the schedule, would not shock and surprise me long term if it does get back on the schedule. Would not shock or surprise me if this ends up becoming the championship finale in the next few years. Number one, it's right smack dab in the city. You have, of course, the LA Coliseum smack dab in the city, but a lot of tracks are on the outskirts of these cities. You'll have National Fairgrounds right smack dab in the city, and then you can basically stay in the national area. You can stay in the national area for like the championship board and the championship banquet, which I think would make a lot of sense and it would be really, really cool. I think Nashville is starting to become like a new capital. It's basically becoming the capital of the South right now. And I think it would definitely make a lot of sense eventually if this does eventually become the championship weekend. So I do hope they can get this approved in the next few years. I think the earliest we'll have a race, like I said already, is around 2025. But I think it'll be very, very cool when it does get officially finalized for a race. So very exciting news for sure that things are kind of heading in the right direction. And I cannot wait to see what they have in store in regards to that. I'm definitely looking forward to that, and really, really exciting news. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brian Patty. As it was announced, I believe, on Wednesday that Brian Patty is going to be moving away from crew chief from Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and will moving down to the Truck Series to crew chief the 51 for Kyle Busch Motorsports in 2023. Brian Patty is a veteran of the Cup Series. He's been a veteran for many, many years. He's crew chief for drivers like Juan Pablo Montoya, Clint Bowyer, and also Ricky Stenhouse Jr. While he hasn't had the greatest success in the history in the Cup Series, I think when you have a guy who has a lot of experience like Brian Patty, I think it makes a lot of sense to pick a guy like him up, and I think he still is a very good crew chief. I just don't think the driver has been the greatest for him, and I also don't think the team is the greatest as well that he's been on. He'll be going to a really strong organization, and he also has worked for Kyle Busch in the past. He actually was the crew chief for Kyle Busch in Kyle Busch's first start back in 2003. So, and when he ran at Charlotte. So it makes a lot of sense to bring a guy who's been in the series for a long time, who's won a lot of races in the top 3 divisions. He will be a very good addition, I think, for the KBM organization. They also confirmed that Jack Wood will be in the truck for 10 races, Kyle for 5, and then the rest of the races will be decided in the future. So Jack Wood's been confirmed for 10 of those races. Wouldn't be surprised if Brian Patty gets some wins next year with the 51 truck team, but that also means that Mario Lindley will not be back next year. Who, though, is going to be the crew chief for Ricky Stenhouse Jr.? Well, about an hour or two after this was announced, JTG Doherty basically revealed that Mike Kelly, who's been working at JTG for the last few years, will be the crew chief for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in 2023. Mike Kelly has been a former crew chief for Stenhouse back in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, where he won both of his NASCAR Xfinity Series titles. So Mike Kelly brings one big thing, and that is that big experience that he has. So I think this is a great addition for him. I know that Kelly probably doesn't have as much crew chief experience as of recently, but he's a veteran of racing, and I think he'll do a really good job crew chiefing for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. They also think with a new, fresh pace, they've made some changes for Stenhouse to try to make him better. I think that with a new, fresh change of scenery for the team, I think it'll work out on both sides of things. I think Brian Patty will be able to go help KBM get really good starts, and I think it's good that they've got a Chevy-based crew chief with that team. But I also think Mike Kelly is going to be a really good addition to the team. So I'm excited for both of these changes. These are really good changes in my opinion, and I cannot wait to see how these changes go into impacts. I think will have a pretty big impact, in my opinion, for the organization. Really excited about these changes going into 2023. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about the 2023 start times for the Cup Series and some additions to Xfinity Series and the Truck Series. Obviously, we kind of had one of the bigger stories on Wednesday revealed after this was announced. The 2023 start times have been officially revealed. Let's go through them. So, the Clash will be 8 p.m. Eastern on Fox. That is a night race in 2023. After that, the Daytona Duels will be at 7 p.m. Eastern on FS1. The Daytona 500 will be on the same time as it was in 2022, where it will be 2:30 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Then Auto Club, Las Vegas, and Phoenix will all be on Fox at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then Atlanta will be at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Fox. Then COTA will be at 3:30 p.m. and also will be on Fox. Then Richmond will be 3:30 p.m. Eastern, but instead of being on Fox, it's going to be on FS1. So that got removed from a Fox race. Then Bristol Dirt, no surprise here, will be at 7 p.m. Eastern on main Fox. Then after that, Martinsville moves away from a night race and will be at 3 p.m. Eastern on FS1. Then Talladega will be at 3 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Then Dover will be 2 p.m. Eastern FS1. That race gets moved about an hour earlier due to them not having lights. Then Kansas will be on 3 p.m. Eastern on FS1. Darlington, same thing, 3 p.m. Eastern FS1. Then North Wilkesboro will be at 8 p.m. Eastern, but instead of being on Fox, that will be on FS1, which I think is a little bit disappointing. Then Coke 600 will be at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on main Fox. After that, Worldwide Technology Race will be at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on FS1. Sonoma after that will be at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, but instead of being on FS1, that actually will be on main Fox. Then Nashville will move from a day race to a night race, and we transition to NBC. That will be at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Then the Chicago Street Course race will be at 5:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Then Atlanta gets moved to night race as well at 7 p.m. Eastern on USA. Then New Hampshire, 2:30 p.m. Eastern on USA. That gets moved in half an hour earlier. Then Pocono will be at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, also on USA. Then Richmond will be at 3 p.m. Eastern on USA. Michigan and also Michigan will be at 2 p.m. Eastern on USA. Indy Road Course will be at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on NBC. Then after that, you'll have Watkins Glen at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, followed by Daytona at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on main NBC. Then the Southern 500 will be at 6 p.m. Eastern on USA. Then you will have Kansas at 3 p.m. Eastern on USA, followed by Bristol at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on USA. Texas will be at 3:30 p.m. Eastern USA. Then Talladega will be at 2 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Then the Charlotte will also be at 2 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Then Las Vegas and Homestead both each will be 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on NBC. Mars will be at 2 p.m. Eastern on NBC, and then Phoenix will be at 3 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Some notable Xfinity Series changes. Darlington for the Xfinity Series will be on Fox. There will only be 5 Xfinity Series races on broadcast, including Homestead, which will be on broadcast for NBC. And also Road America will also be on main NBC as well. Now, for the Camping World Truck Series, there will be only one main broadcast on the main networks, but that is going to be the North Wilkesboro Truck Series race the day before the Cup Series race happens for the All-Star race. So, let's talk about the schedule a little bit and talk about the times. There are some positives here, and actually some really good positives. 1, more race on broadcast. 21 out of the 38 races will be on main broadcast. That is 1 more than last year. I think that's a really big step in the right direction compared to 2015 where we had 18. We're slowly but surely getting closer to having a full season of broadcasting, and I think that's a big positive. Another big positive, in my honest opinion, is the fact that you're going to have Nashville and Atlanta both be night races. Especially during the summer. I've been saying that those should have been night races for 2022. Very happy that those are going to be night races in 2023. That should really help the attendance for those events, and I think it makes a lot more sense. Also, more race on NBC. Of course, Sonoma being on Fox. I do like that change. I think there's some other good changes as well, including the end of season, of course, basically being there. Also, the Truck Series race at North Wilkesboro will be on Fox. I think that's a major positive step. My only major gripe with the schedule is, along with some of the later start times, is that North Wilkesboro for the Cup Series, the All-Star Race, will not be on main Fox. I understand that race has been a cable race really for a very long time, but I think especially since Fox really pushed for that race to be on the network, that absolutely 100%, no doubt, should be a 100% main Fox network race. That race, they wanted for a long time. That should be a main network race. I don't understand why that's not. But that's my only major gripe with that. Other than that, I like a lot of these changes for sure. And honestly, I think that this schedule is really, really good in my opinion. I think there's a lot of positive things. That race should have been on main Fox with North Wilkesboro. Other than that, I don't have any other major gripes with the schedule, and that is the schedule going into 2023 and the network times as well. I didn't go over much of the Xfinity and trucks because there's not much to note from that except a couple of changes I mentioned, but that is your 2023 schedule for the times. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next and the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about international racing. Now, this has been something we've talked about on the channel earlier this week. But according to Adam Stern, we've had some more conversations. Now that we're getting closer and closer to potential international racing. According to Adam Stern, NASCAR holding a cup race outside the U.S. is now a when, not if situation, and the league is in active talks with a bunch of different venues. There's no timeline yet, according to Chad Siegler, who does a lot of VP International Business for NASCAR, but he says it wouldn't rule out a potential international race in 2024. International racing has been on NASCAR's ticket for the last few years, and I think a lot of this is due to the new thing about the whole concept of the stadium concept. But I think NASCAR going international makes a lot of sense. I think especially with the broadened audiences. Now, where would NASCAR go first if they do go international? I think you have to begin in Canada and Mexico. There are a few tracks up in Canada that you can obviously go to. You've got Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, an old former track Villeneuve that basically used to host the NASCAR Xfinity Series races from 2007 to 2012 for transition away from that track at the end of 2012 where they went to Mid-Ohio. I think going over to Circuit Gilles Villeneuve and going back to the Montreal area makes a lot of sense to me. That track always provided fantastic and amazing racing really throughout its entire time as a racetrack, and I think it would make 100% a ton of sense to once again host racing up in the Canadian area and go back to our Canadian brethren. Also, Canadian Tire would make a lot of sense as well to go back there. That track always provided, really except 2019, that track always provided fantastic racing, always provided amazing finishes throughout its time. Go back to 2013, the classic finish between Chase Elliott and Ty Dillon. You go back to 2014 between Ryan Blaney and Herman Quiroga. 2016, we had that incredible finish between Custer and Nemechek. 2017 had a pretty good finish as well. And then 2018, you had an amazing finish between Gragson and Gillen for the victory where Justin Haley snuck through to get the victory. I think it makes sense to go there. You also in Mexico, do have a track called their Automano Hermanos Rodriguez racetrack that they raced at for F1 very recently. This track hosted NASCAR racing from 2005 to 2008. Races won by Mark Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Juan Montoya, and Kyle Busch in the 4-year history of that race track. I think it would make a lot of sense for them to go back to that track and go to Mexico. You also have the possibility of going to Europe. You go to Brands Hatch out in Europe. You have the concept of some of the other tracks. Go back to Suzuka for that matter. I think going international racing has to be a thing that NASCAR is looking at for 2024. But of course, you got to produce a product at home and try to get your stars popular. But NASCAR is trying out new things. I think an international race would really generally, in my opinion, benefit NASCAR in a major way. And it sounds like 2024 could be a very big possibility. I don't see NASCAR going abroad in 2024. I don't see them doing that. But I do think in 2024, we will basically be going either to Canada or Mexico. I think that's where we start. I think maybe by the 2030, we do end up having race in countries like Japan and the UK and Germany, like Nuremberg, and perhaps that could be possible options. But I don't see NASCAR going outside of North America, at least for now, past 2024, maybe 2025, 2026, they do. Who knows at this particular point? But I think NASCAR going international racing is going to make a lot of sense long term. And I think a lot of people really want to go back to Montreal. Track never had a disappointing race in the history. And I think if we're going to go to a racetrack, this track, Montreal, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, needs to be back on the circuit as soon as possible. And I do hope that NASCAR can get back out there in the not-so-distant future. The track, like I said, provided amazing racing throughout its entire time. It's a great facility, a great racetrack. And again, hope NASCAR can find a way to get back to that racetrack in 2023. Hope and get back there, and hopefully there's a chance we do race there in 2023. Hope it happens. 2024 actually. Hopefully it happens, and we'll see what happens in the future. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we are talking about Ryan Preece. Now, we've talked about Ryan Preece many, many times on the channel, and the big reason is because about the 41's future in that car. Right now, Stewart-Haas Racing has not decided who will be in the 41 car in 2023. It will either be Ryan Preece or Cole Custer. Now, Bob Poggers was answering a question in regards to that, and it sounds like the decision will be coming in the next 2 weeks in regards to who will be in the 41 car. And it sounds like Ryan Preece is still a major possibility to drive the 41 car in 2023. Obviously, we've talked about this, like I said, a few times on the channel, but basically, the rumors right now is that Tony Stewart, he wants Ryan Preece to drive the 41 car in 2023. However, Gene Haas, who is an owner of the team, he wants to keep Cole Custer in the 41 car in 2023 as well. Now, if you look at statistics-wise, another big reason why we're talking about this is because potentially you could have 2 drivers leaving Stewart-Haas Racing at the end of 2023. You have Cole Custer, not Cole Custer. You have Kevin Harvick, who is going to likely retire at the end of 2023. There's been a lot of rumors and rumors about that, and it's sounding more and more likely that that's going to happen. Kevin Harvick will be 48 by the end of 2023, and I think Kevin Harvick's going to want to focus on running his management firm and management company and focusing on trying to get Keelan's racing career going, especially since Keelan will be 11 in 2023. By 2024, will be 12 years old. I think Kevin Harvick's going to want to focus on trying to get Keelan focused to eventually maybe come over to NASCAR, maybe try at one point to go to Formula 1. Eric Almirola, while he signed a multi-year deal with the team, I think that second year is an option year. It wouldn't surprise me if next year is, again, his last year in the Cup Series, but he also could return as well to drive the 10 car. So you have a possibility of 2 rides being open. When I look at Stewart-Haas Racing going into 2023, and I look at the talent that they currently have right now, you've got Chase Briscoe, who's going to be there long term. And I'll say this about Cole Custer as well. I'll get into him. Cole Custer, he's a great driver in Xfinity Series. He won a lot of races. In fact, he won a race this year with SS Greenlight Racing with Stewart-Haas Racing Performance and did pretty good in Xfinity. But in the 3 years that Cole Custer is racing Cup, driving a 41 car, I understand that Gene wants to keep him because he's got an executive and a president of the team is Joe Custer, right? My personal opinion when it comes to this, Custer has done a very bad job in the 3 years he's been with the team. Now, that being said, the last few weeks of the season, I think he knows he's kind of potentially out of the ride next year. He did perform way better and showed a lot more pace and speed. Had Cole Custer perform like he had, I think there would have been a better chance for him to stay. But if I had to choose who I think would drive the number 41 car, I would personally give the ride to Ryan Preece. And here's why I would give the ride to Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece, I think, is generally a better driver than Cole Custer. The guy is very, very talented. I know he didn't do great at JTG Doherty, but I'll be for real. That team was an uncharted team the last year. He raced with a team back in 2021. And also, he's gotten 2 Truck Series wins. I know people look at him saying, well, he won a couple Truck Series races. It should be easy for a guy who raced in Cup. And you're right on that. But in the few starts he also drove for Rick Ware Racing, he ran top 20 consistently and was very fast in those races. And every time he got behind the wheel of the car, he just does a really, really good job. And I think that he will actually get the best out of equipment and will make the 41 car the most competitive it's been since probably the time that Kurt Busch drove the car. I know it sounds crazy to say that, but I could see them doing that. Now, when it comes to Cole Custer, if he doesn't get the 41, where would I put it? I put Cole Custer in the 15 car for Rick Ware Racing, but give him a full Stewart-Haas racing car. Keep him in the Cup Series. Get it, people like maybe Mike Shipley, maybe he gets basically added back in the sport. You could bring him back to be the crew chief, or bring Tony Cardinoni and basically bring him in to be the crew chief for him, since I don't even know Chad Johnson's going to be crew chief for the team next year. You could bring Chad Johnson crew chief for Ryan Preece in Cup once again, be back in the Cup Series once again. But I think that's what I would do, put him in the 15 and give him a full Stewart-Haas racing car. But then in 2024, I then think he can bring Cole Custer back, performs well enough, because I think he still deserves to be in the Cup Series. I just don't think he's performed enough to be in a good Cup Series car. Because while I don't think Stewart-Haas Racing is a fantastic organization in any shape or form, I will say that I think that if you put a good driver, I don't think Cole Custer's a bad driver. I think he is a good driver. But I think one of the issues I've had personally with a driver like Cole Custer is I don't think Cole Custer has really performed up to his potential and really up to the standards that you expect a driver like Cole Custer to form. He did improve this year a little bit than for over last year, which is a good thing, but he's ran 26th or 27th every year. And while Eric Almirola didn't finish much better, he's been a better driver for SHR, and Kevin Harvick's contending for championships, and Chase Briscoe nearly made it to the championship 4 this year, and Custer's just been the outlier. I know sometimes in a 4-car team, the 4 driver, which is Custer, can sometimes being the worst performer. But in my personal opinion, when it comes to Cole Custer and driving the 41, I just personally think Ryan Preece should, in my opinion, take over the 41 car next year, but keep Custer to Cup Series, drive the 15. Which, if you get him in the 15, that means there will only be, I think, one ride that's not a full-time driver next year. Which, I mean, the only one to be the 78 car, and there's some rumors around that team that I'm not going to get into in their future and potential alliances and manufacturers they could be switching to. But if I had to make a choice, I'm putting Ryan Preece in the number 41 car for 2023. But that is just my honest opinion. So, that is for today's short NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as for my Patreon as well. Links are below over that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. Who do you think should drive the 41 car in 2023? Do you think it should be Ryan Preece or Cole Custer? Let me know in the comments below. And what international racetrack would you like to see NASCAR go to in 2024 if they do go international racing? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to be releasing. I'm probably going to surprise you. Sunday, we're likely to have a race review for the Brazilian GP. Monday will likely be the first team preview on the channel, and it will likely be 2311 Racing. That will be the first team preview that will likely drop on Monday, unless over the weekend we get a lot of major news stories. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.